Hello, welcome to Abdow Avenue. I'm Jason Abdow, and today we are going to be talking about the sophomore album from Algiers, The Underside of Power. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with Algiers' 2015 self-titled album, it is a phenomenal record, first of all. It made it pretty high up on my year-end list in 2015, and honestly, if I were to remake that list right now, this album would probably make it even higher on that list. This album is so great, and what made it stand out initially for me is just how unique it was. It's an album that uses these post-punk instrumentation, while we have lead singer Franklin James Fisher's vocals, deeply gospel-inspired vocals, and it just comes together to create such an incredibly powerful experience. And I just loved it, and the lyrics were deeply political, a lot of racial themes going on this album, and it's an incredible album. If you haven't listened to it, definitely do. But I was excited for The Underside of Power just because of how great that first album was. So I went in kind of blind, but I assumed with a title like The Underside of Power, and considering how political this year has been, that this album would definitely make a few bold statements, and I'd say a few would probably be an understatement in this case. The band comes together with excellent production as always. Franklin James Fisher's vocals, absolutely incredible, powering, howling vocals. I am just so impressed with how great he is able to sing with this production. Just make it sound so natural. And the lyrics all over this album, they're just... I mean, just look at we get the first song, which starts off with a sample from Fred Hampton, I believe his name is, and he was a member of the Chicago Black Panthers, so you can tell where this album's gonna go right from the beginning. And it's called Walk Like a Panther, and it's, it definitely has those revolutionary themes, the themes of uprising, and it's just so awesome. It's just a little distorted, but still, like, such a powerful opening. And then we get the song Cry of the Martyrs, which is haunting how they kind of use multi-tracking, I think, to kind of get these vocals howling in the back of Franklin James Fisher, as he's kind of singing from the perspective of these fallen martyrs and saying that how people like to remind you how all these people who fought so hard that they all fell down, so you need to kind of stay down. And I mean, it's just an incredible, incredible song. And then following that, we get the title track. And again, the first three songs on this album automatically, like, grabs you. I mean, these are some of the best songs on the entire album. Some of them are just some of the best songs all year in general, and that's definitely the case for the title track, The Underside of Power, which isn't just the best song on here, probably, but it's probably the biggest pop song, probably not that, but it's the catchiest song that Algiers has ever written. And it's just, I cannot go to the gym without listening to this song. It's just, I mean, you listen to the lyrics, and it's not too subtle what they're trying to say here, but I mean, just the production, it's definitely a little smoother. You can make out the vocals a little better, but man, this song just comes together so perfectly. I love this track. And then the following song, Death March, is also another really interesting one. It's kind of portrays people who are kind of brainwashed, I guess, by fascism and capitalism, and they kind of compare them to zombies walking around. And I mean, like I said, this is a deeply political album, so you'll know whether or not this is for you. And I think the lyrical content, while the first album was definitely political, this one is definitely broader. I mean, just look at a song like Animals. You have this wild instrumentation backing it, and it's basically just throwing hatred at Donald Trump and his entire administration, just that entire situation. And it's just, it's probably the best condemnation of Donald Trump I've heard in a song in recent memory. I mean, I feel like the political music we have been getting has been a little underwhelming. for the most part. There's been some great political content, but this is certainly among the best we've gotten in the post-Trump election era of music. And then the album centerpiece, Cleveland, is absolutely chilling. It's this kind of apocalyptic scenario where, kind of on the day of reckoning, or the day of judgment, whatever you'd call it, all the victims, all the people who have died as a result of police violence and police brutality, they rise up and they kind of seek vengeance. And, you know, it's really dark, but also the song is handled so well, and they kind of name drop a bunch of the victims. Like Sandra Bland, for example, gets a name drop here, just kind of calling out all these people that are going to rise up and, you know, seek vengeance. And it's really dark, and this album it succeeds so well in setting a really dark, bleak tone. And surprisingly, not all of it seems so like death and destruction and revolutionary and violent. I mean, we look at a song like Madame Ryu, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is shows a little bit of hope. It's a reference to a book, I believe. It's some form of literature. Excuse me for not being familiar with Madame Ryu and the Plague, but it's whatever kind of literature it comes from. The character the song's named after it takes place during the plague, and she's kind of comes to terms, I guess, with her death. I'm actually really not familiar with it. I'm not gonna lie, I just kind of spark noted it a little, and I'm struggling to remember it now. But it does offer a little bit of hope, and I feel like that's important on an album like this, just to not kind of paint it all as bleak, and just kind of feel like, hey, maybe there's something. And the last 4 songs, I would say, while not all of them are bad, it definitely slows down considerably. Out of the final 4 songs, 2 of them are actually instrumentals, Plague Years and Bury Me Standing. And of the 2, Bury Me Standing is by far the better song. But nothing against Plague Years. That's still a solid song. It's just a tad unnecessary, maybe. And A Hymn for the Average Man is another perfectly acceptable song. I do like that one, but it is slower. And I do also like the closing song, The Cycle, The Spiral. That's another really good song. I think it's a pretty good way to end the album. I feel like if it ended on anything heavier, it might feel a little odd, so I guess it's kind of nice that the album kind of slows down before it comes to an end. So I guess that's like the biggest criticism I could have with this album, and the lyrics can be a little tough to make out. I would say this album is definitely best listened to with the lyrics in front of you, at least for your first few listens, because the lyrics are just so well written, and it'd be a shame if you miss some of it because it's a little unclear, distorted, or whatever. So that'd be my biggest recommendation going into this album. Just make sure you pull up Genius or whatever you use to look up song lyrics and just follow along, because it'll definitely increase your enjoyment of this album. So yeah, this is like a strong A-. This is one of the best records of the year. I love this album, and it might even be a little better than the self-titled debut. I might need to re-listen to that and think it over, but again, Algiers is one of the most interesting bands coming out now, and if any of this sounds remotely interesting to you, please check them out. At least check out that title track, Underside of Power. Again, that's a wonderful, wonderful song. So have you listened to the Underside of Power? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you agree or disagree with me? Just let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching.